What if I told you that 90% of people's mental strength isn't destroyed by external challenges, but by invisible psychological environments they walk into every single day? Places you inhabit without even realizing it, silently draining your energy, breeding anxiety, and leaving you feeling lost. These aren't physical locations you can Google Maps. They're invisible mental arenas, digital spaces, and social circles that subtly rewire your brain, making it work against you. For decades, you might have blamed yourself for feeling drained, anxious, or constantly on edge. But what if the problem wasn't you, but the insidious environments you've been conditioned to accept? Carl Jung, the legendary psychiatrist, uncovered this truth over 60 years ago. He treated a patient who appeared outwardly successful but was internally crumbling. Jung traced his unraveling to 7 specific psychological habitats this man frequented daily. The transformation, once these traps were identified and dismantled, was nothing short of miraculous. Today, I'm going to pull back the curtain on these 7 mind-destroying environments. I'll show you how to spot them, how they're silently undermining your mental strength, and Jung's groundbreaking escape protocol, a system designed to reclaim your sanity and psychological sovereignty. What you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you navigate every relationship, every digital feed, and every decision for the rest of your life. Get ready to see the world and your own mind with completely new eyes. The first and arguably most insidious of these zones is the echo chamber. Imagine a room where every single voice, every article, every meme, every conversation perfectly mirrors your own thoughts, beliefs, and biases. It's comforting, isn't it? Until those reflections start feeling like undeniable, absolute truth. Jung's patient immersed himself in social clubs and political circles, where his exact views were endlessly validated. He believed he was informed. Jung saw a man being psychologically poisoned. Here's the scientific gut punch. Your brain, starved of genuine challenge, literally weakens. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research at UCLA confirms that without diverse perspectives, your critical thinking muscles atrophy, much like an unused limb. Jung called this collective possession, when the group mind swallows individual thought. Questioning anything begins to feel like a betrayal of your tribe, cementing a rigid, fragile worldview terrified of anything different. So, how do you know if you're trapped? Ask yourself, can I predict what everyone in my circle will say about almost any topic? Do different opinions feel like personal attacks rather than interesting ideas? Have I stopped asking, what if I'm wrong, about my core beliefs? Do my conversations primarily reinforce rather than challenge my thinking? Jung discovered that minds stuck in echo chambers don't just stop growing, they actively shrink. They become more fearful, more dependent on the group for a false sense of psychological safety. And this mental weakness makes you perfectly vulnerable to the second dangerous place. Welcome to the comparison arena, a coliseum of self-doubt, where your entire worth is relentlessly measured against everyone else's highlight reel. Jung's patient, already softened by the echo chamber, found himself trapped here, obsessively scrolling through the perfect lives of his peers. Every promotion, every vacation, every glowing update from an acquaintance felt like a punch to his gut, a personal failure. Neuroscience backs Jung up. Dr. Rachel Calaguero's research shows that constant comparison literally shrinks your prefrontal cortex, the very part of your brain responsible for self-worth and sound decision-making. Here's the brutal truth. Comparison doesn't motivate improvement. It trains your brain to hunt for inadequacy in every corner of your life. Jung called this the inflation-deflation cycle. You're either fleetingly superior or perpetually inferior, never simply whole, never simply you. Are you trapped? Check for these signs. Does other people's success make you feel like a failure? Do you achieve goals but still feel empty because someone else did it better? Do you find yourself meticulously curating your life to look successful rather than living what feels right? Does your happiness hinge on being ahead of others? Jung understood that this arena is a soul killer because it severs you from your deepest values and desires. You stop chasing genuine joy and start chasing external recognition. But believe me, the third psychological trap is even more insidious. Now, before we plunge deeper into the next trap, let's quickly understand the chilling science behind why these environments are so devastating. Modern neuroscience has caught up to Jung's insights, proving his theories on environmental psychology. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research reveals that toxic psychological environments trigger a chronic release of cortisol, your body's stress hormone. This constant chemical bath literally shrinks your hippocampus, the vital brain region responsible for memory and emotional regulation. In plain English, you become less capable of managing your emotions and remembering clearly. But here's what Jung grasped decades before brain scans. These places don't just temporarily hurt you. They rewire your default mental state. Spend enough time in them, and your brain starts recreating their patterns even when you're alone. Jung's patient developed what neuroscientists now call learned helplessness. His mind was trained to expect failure, criticism, and inadequacy. Even in safe spaces, he couldn't relax. His neural pathways permanently etched by psychological danger. This is precisely why Jung famously stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These environments aren't just influencing you. They are programming your unconscious mind to work against your own well-being. And the most disturbing part, most of us are completely unaware we're being programmed, because the damage happens so gradually, so subtly, beneath conscious awareness. Our third stop is the performance theater, where our authenticity is not just discouraged, it's punished. Here, you're rewarded only for wearing the right mask, for playing the expected role. Jung's patient navigated a corporate world where any vulnerability was career suicide. He perfected the art of laughing at unfunny jokes, nodding along to ideas he despised, and meticulously editing his true self to fit the company's sterile culture. Jung termed this persona identification, when the mask you wear becomes the only identity you recognize. "I don't know who I am anymore," the patient confessed to Jung. "I've been performing for so long that the real me feels like a stranger." This environment is psychologically lethal because it teaches you to abandon yourself one small, harmless compromise at a time, until those compromises compound into complete self-betrayal. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that those trapped in these theaters develop a brutal inner critic, internalizing the harsh judgments of their surroundings. So, are you performing? Do social interactions leave you utterly exhausted, not energized? Do you constantly catch yourself agreeing with things you don't believe? Are you terrified to share an unpopular opinion? Do you feel like you're wearing a costume you can't take off, with your real thoughts and feelings seeming dangerous or inappropriate? The patient summed it up perfectly. "I became so good at being what others wanted that I forgot what I wanted. And when I tried to remember, there was nothing there." Jung realized this place doesn't just hide your authentic self. It erases it, layer by layer, until you're a hollow performance with no core. And when you learn to hide your true self, you inevitably fall into the fourth, dangerous place. Next up, we enter the silent suffering space, where genuine emotional needs are systematically buried alive, beneath a carefully constructed illusion of stability and peace. Jung saw this repeatedly. Patients from perfect families where love was assumed but never shown, where problems were swept under the rug, and where appearances trumped authentic connection. Jung's patient grew up in this exact environment. "We never fought," he told Jung, "but we never really talked either. I learned that having needs was selfish and expressing pain was a weakness." This space creates what Jung chillingly called emotional starvation. Your emotional needs don't just vanish when ignored. They fester in your unconscious, manifesting as anxiety, depression, and, inexplicable, gnawing emptiness. Dr. Sue Johnson's attachment research shows that chronic emotional suppression literally dysregulates your nervous system, locking your body into a state of chronic stress. The most dangerous aspect: how utterly normal it feels. The patient believed his family was close because they avoided conflict. He didn't realize avoiding conflict meant avoiding intimacy. Are you silently suffering? Do you feel profoundly lonely even when surrounded by people? Have you learned to cope with pain rather than heal from it? Does asking for emotional support feel selfish or weak? Do you harbor strong feelings with nowhere safe to express them? Does the peace in your relationships feel brittle, like it could shatter if you dare to be truly honest? Jung observed that individuals in this space become profoundly disconnected from their own emotional reality. They know something is deeply wrong but can't name it, because naming it would break the unspoken, suffocating rules of their family or group. From stifling silence to overwhelming noise, we blast into the chaos storm. This is where constant, relentless mental stimulation drowns out your inner voice, making it impossible to hear yourself think. Jung's patient lived in a perpetual frenzy. Newspapers screaming for attention, radio programs fueling anxieties, social gatherings draining him, and work demands relentlessly following him home. He filled every quiet moment with reading, conversation, or activity because silence felt utterly unbearable. But Jung saw through it. This wasn't preference, it was powerful avoidance. The patient was terrified of what stillness might reveal: unresolved pain, difficult decisions, or uncomfortable parts of himself he refused to face. Dr. Adam Ghazi's research at UCS confirms that chronic stimulation impairs your ability to form coherent thoughts and make clear decisions. Your prefrontal cortex becomes overwhelmed, leading to impulsive choices just to reduce the cognitive load. Jung called this psychic fragmentation. Your attention so scattered, you lose the ability to integrate experiences into wisdom. You consume endless information, but retain nothing meaningful. Here's the insidious trap. Chaos becomes addictive. Your brain adapts to high stimulation, then craves even more intense input just to feel normal. Quiet moments trigger anxiety because your nervous system has forgotten how to self-regulate. Are you caught in the storm? Does silence make you instinctively grab your phone, turn on the TV, or reach for distraction? Do you have strong opinions on everything but deep understanding of nothing? Do you feel constantly busy, but can't remember what you've actually accomplished? Does slowing down trigger anxiety instead of peace? Do you consume information endlessly, but still feel empty inside? Jung's patient confided, "I stay busy because when I stop, all the things I'm avoiding catch up with me. But I'm so tired of running." When the chaos storm teaches you to run from your inner voice, you become terrifyingly vulnerable to the sixth dangerous place. Now, a deeply personal and often agonizing trap: the self-abandonment chamber. This is the most insidious of all, because it happens so gradually, so subtly you often don't notice it until you're utterly lost. It's the space where you systematically ignore your own needs, your gut instincts, and your deepest truth. You say yes when every cell in your body screams no. You cling to draining relationships because leaving feels harder than enduring. You consistently choose comfort over authenticity and perceived safety over vital growth. Jung's patient articulated it perfectly. "I became so good at ignoring my gut instincts that I eventually stopped having them." He made every decision based on external expectations, practicality, or conflict avoidance. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's trauma research reveals that chronic self-abandonment literally disconnects you from your body's innate wisdom. You lose the ability to even recognize what you need, want, or feel, because those signals have been consistently overridden, dismissed, or shamed. Jung called this soul losses, not a mystical concept, but a stark psychological reality where you become estranged from your own core self. I felt like I was living someone else's life, the patient confessed. I couldn't remember the last time I made a decision based on what I actually wanted. This place is especially dangerous because it often masquerades as maturity, responsibility, or even selflessness. Society frequently rewards self-abandonment, making it incredibly difficult to identify as a problem. Are you living on autopilot? Can you remember the last time you truly checked in with your own feelings? Are your decisions consistently based on what's expected rather than what feels right? Have you stopped having preferences about things that once mattered deeply to you? When someone asks what you want, do you genuinely, terrifyingly, not know? Jung understood that this chamber creates a terrifying emptiness. The patient had succeeded at everything he was supposed to want, yet felt utterly hollow. I didn't know who I was beneath all the should-dos and have-tos. This profound disconnect leads us to the seventh and most intimate, yet terrifying, of these psychological traps. Finally, we arrive at the seventh, and arguably most potent, psychological trap, the shadow basement. This place exists entirely within your own mind. A dark, dusty vault where you've locked away parts of yourself you're too afraid, ashamed, or disgusted to face. Jung's patient had spent years diligently avoiding this internal space, pushing down painful memories, unacceptable emotions, and shameful thoughts into what Jung termed the personal unconscious. But here's Jung's terrifying revelation. What you bury doesn't stay buried. It grows stronger in the darkness, influencing your behavior in ways you don't understand, silently pulling the strings of your life. The patient found himself sabotaging relationships, overreacting to minor slights, and repeating destructive patterns he swore he'd never follow. Dr. Peter Levine's trauma research shows that unprocessed emotional content literally lives in your nervous system, creating chronic dysregulation until it's consciously integrated. Jung called this shadow possession, when the parts of yourself you've rejected seize control of your life from the unconscious. I became everything I hated about my father, the patient told Jung, but I couldn't see it happening until the damage was done. The shadow basement is dangerous because avoidance gives these rejected parts more power, not less. They burst forth as projections onto others, as addictions, sudden uncontrollable rage, or inexplicable self-sabotage. But here's the paradox, the profound insight Jung also discovered. The shadow isn't just dark. It contains tremendous power, creativity, and untapped potential. The patient's once feared anger, consciously integrated, transformed into passionate advocacy. His deep sadness became profound empathy. His shame, fierce compassion for others struggling with similar issues. Are you avoiding your shadow? Do you experience strong emotional reactions that surprise even yourself? Do you find yourself repeating destructive relationship patterns despite knowing better? Do you harshly judge others for traits you secretly fear in yourself? Do you battle persistent anxiety or depression with no clear cause, feeling like you're fighting an invisible enemy within? Jung realized that true healing isn't about eradicating the shadow, but about descending into this basement. Not with self-judgment, but with a courageous curiosity and profound compassion. It's time to face what you've hidden. So you've recognized the traps. Now how do you break free? Jung didn't just identify the problems. He engineered the solution. The individuation process, his systematic approach to achieving profound psychological freedom. This isn't a quick fix, but a deliberate, empowering journey. Step 1. Conscious recognition. You cannot leave a prison you don't know you're in. Just like Jung's patient, you must ruthlessly and honestly assess which of these environments you inhabit daily. This demands brutal honesty, but without self-judgment, simply observation. Step 2. Environmental audit. Scrutinize every space you regularly enter, both physical and digital. Jung taught that awareness transforms unconscious influence into conscious choice. Ask yourself, without flinching, does this environment help me grow? or does it keep me small? Step 3. Strategic withdrawal. You don't need to abandon your entire life, but you must limit your exposure to toxic psychological environments. Jung's patients started small, reducing time in soul-sucking social circles, setting firm boundaries with draining individuals, and carving out daily periods of true solitude and reflection. Step 4. Conscious integration. This is where Jung's approach becomes revolutionary. You don't just avoid negative spaces. You actively create positive ones. Seek out people who challenge you kindly, environments that genuinely support your growth, and spaces where authenticity isn't just tolerated, but celebrated and valued. Step 5. Shadow work. Remember that basement. Jung believed that until you face what you've hidden there, you will unconsciously recreate toxic patterns everywhere you go. This requires dedicated therapy, profound journaling, or other methods to bring that unconscious content into the light of awareness. Step 6. Regular maintenance. Psychological freedom isn't a one-time achievement. It demands ongoing vigilance. These dangerous places are incredibly seductive because they offer false comfort, easy belonging, or familiar, albeit destructive, patterns. You must consciously and consistently choose growth over comfort, truth over convenience. After 6 months of committed work, Jung's patient returned to him, eyes alight. I had no idea how much mental energy I was wasting in those toxic spaces, he shared. Now, I feel like I have my mind back. Jung documented remarkable transformations, turning this patient's journey into a blueprint for thousands seeking mental liberation. Within 3 months of exiting the echo chamber, his critical thinking soared. He wasn't just questioning assumptions. He was actively seeking out diverse perspectives, making decisions based on solid evidence, not just groupthink. Free from the comparison arena, he rediscovered his own authentic interests and goals, pursuing work aligned with his values, not just his image. Leaving the performance theater was a harder battle, requiring him to disappoint those who preferred his mask. But Jung taught him a crucial truth. Relationships built on false performance aren't real relationships at all. The silent suffering space demanded he learn entirely new communication skills, expressing needs, setting boundaries, asking for support, skills his family had never modeled. Escaping the chaos storm meant developing a profound tolerance for stillness, for boredom, and for the initial anxiety that arose in quiet moments. But Jung knew wisdom only emerges in that contemplative space. The Self-Abandonment Chamber called for the bravest change, making decisions based on his own truth, not external expectations. This meant saying no to some, but finally saying yes to himself. The shadow basement work was ongoing, a lifelong commitment, but each integration made him more whole, more compassionate, and less likely to project his internal struggles onto others. Jung observed that people who escape these places don't just feel better. They become fundamentally different people. Their relationships blossom, their decision-making clarifies, and they develop what Jung called psychological sovereignty. Here's Jung's truly profound insight about psychological environments. When you change your relationship to these spaces, you begin to change the spaces themselves. The patient's family initially resisted his new boundaries and emotional honesty. They tried to drag him back into silent suffering because his growth threatened their familiar patterns. But Jung taught him to maintain his changes with unwavering compassion, not aggression. Gradually, his authenticity gave others permission to be real. His sister started expressing her own long-buried feelings. His father, after decades, finally admitted to his own depression. The entire family system began healing because one person refused to participate in the dysfunction. At work, he stopped performing and started contributing authentically. Some colleagues felt threatened, yes, but many more were profoundly inspired. He discovered that authentic leadership was far more powerful than people-pleasing. Jung called this The ripple effect of individuation. When you stop participating in toxic psychological patterns, you force those patterns to either evolve or dissolve. The patient told Jung, "I thought changing myself would make me lonely, but it actually attracted people who wanted real connection. I traded many relationships for a few meaningful ones, and it was the best exchange I ever made." This is Jung's ultimate, liberating insight about these dangerous places. They persist because we collectively agree to inhabit them. But when enough individuals choose psychological freedom, the collective environment transforms. Your choice matters, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Remember Jung's profound, almost chilling discovery. 90% of people's mental strength is systematically eroded by these 7 psychological environments. But now you know something most people don't. You have the power to choose differently. Jung's patient began as a man slowly losing his mind in spaces that felt normal, even comfortable. He ended as someone who had not only reclaimed his psychological sovereignty, but became a beacon, helping countless others do the same. These aren't abstract theories. These are the very real psychological battlegrounds you face every single day. The echo chamber, confirming your biases while weakening your mind. The comparison arena, making your achievements feel meaningless. The performance theater, where masks are rewarded and authenticity is punished. The silent suffering space, burying your needs under a false peace. The chaos storm, drowning your inner voice in relentless noise. The self-abandonment chamber, where you gradually betray your truest self. And the shadow basement, where you lock away parts of your soul, only for them to control you from the dark. But Jung also illuminated the path out, not through naive escape or blind avoidance, but through conscious recognition, strategic, courageous choices, and the unwavering commitment to grow beyond what's merely comfortable. The patient Jung treated in 1961 eventually became a therapist himself, dedicating his life to guiding others out of these same psychological traps. He understood that true mental strength isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about choosing which difficulties serve your growth. Jung's final, profound lesson rings truer than ever. These places will always exist, and they will always be seductive. Echo chambers offer easy belonging. Comparison arenas promise shallow motivation. Performance theaters provide instant approval. Silent suffering feels like peace. Chaos storms distract from pain. Self-abandonment avoids conflict. Shadow basements hide shame. But authentic mental strength, psychological freedom, and genuine fulfillment come from choosing growth over comfort, truth over approval, and consciousness over convenience. The question isn't if you'll encounter these dangerous places. You will. The question is, will you recognize them when you do? Will you possess the courage to leave? And will you, by your own example, create the kind of psychological environment where others can be free too? Jung believed the future of human consciousness hinges on individuals brave enough to choose psychological freedom over collective unconsciousness. That choice begins right now, with recognizing where you are, and deciding where you truly want to be. Your mind is not your enemy, but the places you allow it to inhabit absolutely might be. So, which of these 7 dangerous places have you spent too much time in? Share your recognition in the comments below. Sometimes, simply naming where we've been is the very first, powerful step towards psychological freedom. Don't forget to subscribe to Miradox for more insights that can truly transform your relationship with your own mind. And if you're ready to explore more of Jung's insights into psychological transformation, you absolutely have to check out my video on the most dangerous Carl Jung psychology sign. Stay alert. I revealed the critical warning signs that indicate someone is projecting their unconscious shadow onto you, and why immediate withdrawal might be your only true protection. Trust me, it's a game changer. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.